Graduated exposure, practice 2. You're now going to learn how to lose your fear of external situations. As I was saying before, it's actually to lose your fear of panic in external situations. This is sometimes called real-life graduated exposure or in vivo exposure. And this is for panic disorder with agoraphobia. So if you're avoiding or enduring places or situations where you feel you may not be able to escape, or you may be embarrassed if you had a panic attack, then you're said to be suffering from agoraphobia. And there's a more detailed description about agoraphobia in workbook number 2. In this case, it's very important you practice repeated exposure, gradual exposure to these situations. Real life graduated exposure practice, the basic procedure. First of all, you're going to create a list of all the situations that you fear. Then you're going to rate them for levels of anxiety that each of these situations produce. Then you're going to put them in order from the least feared situation to the most feared situation. And this is called a fear hierarchy. Then what you're going to do is plan and practice graduated exposure to the first situation on the list. That's the situation that causes you least anxiety. And you'll do this daily if possible until that situation causes you a minimal amount of anxiety. Remember, you're going to get used to the situation, you're going to learn how to deal with it, and you're only going to deal with situations that you can handle at any one time before you move on. So then, after you've done that situation, you'll move on to the next situation on your fear hierarchy. Sounds simple, but I know it might sound that it's going to be very difficult, but we're going to do it very, very, very gradually. And that's the way to succeed at this. Creating your fear hierarchy. So first of all, write down in no particular order all the situations and places you avoid for fear of having a panic attack. And the reason you write them down in no particular order is it's just easier to do that to begin with. It means you can just think whatever comes into your head, you write it down. Oh, I avoid that, and when I'm in work I don't do that, and I always have to bring somebody with me when I go there, and I don't go that place anymore. Just write them down. And then you can reorder them after you've done that. So there's some typical examples on page 24. Shopping centres, restaurants, cinema, busy streets, places where there's lots of people around. So you feel that might trigger anxiety, and you may feel embarrassed, other people will see you. Buses, trains, subways, planes. Now probably you fear these places because you feel you won't be able to escape quickly. If you have a panic attack, you'll feel confined. Same thing when you're driving or you're on a motorway. You'll feel that if you're in the car and you have a panic attack, you'll worry what might happen, the consequences, the catastrophic consequences that you fear. Elevators, escalators, same thing. You feel you won't be able to get away quickly if you feel panic. Walking outside, running, you may also avoid because that can increase your heart rate. And if you've got a problem with increased heart rate, because you feel that means there's something seriously wrong with you, you'll avoid that like you'll avoid exercise. Bridges, heights, talking to anyone in authority, because you don't want to feel nervous, because you think if you feel anxious then that'll trigger more anxiety and possibly panic attack. Doctors, dentists, hospitals, same thing. So work, meetings, family gatherings, parties, socializing, all places where lots of people around and you feel they may see that you're getting anxious, and then when you feel that way you feel more anxious, and that can lead to panic. But you also may fear being alone, because if you have an extreme fear of the consequences of what's happening to you, you think you better have somebody around just to make sure you're going to be okay. Open spaces, a lot of people have a fear of that because it's unfamiliar. They prefer being in familiar surroundings. Being too far away from home, obviously they like to be where they feel safe. Holidays, well, you just feel that if you're away on holiday, again, you're away from your safe zone, so you just prefer to stay at home. Classrooms, recreation centres, and so on. Now you can add to this list there. It's an infinite, amount of situations that people can come up with. So what you want to do is just write all those down, anything that comes into your head where you know you're avoiding, and then rate each of the situations for the level of anxiety it produces. So you're still not putting them in order yet. Go through the list and just rate from 0 to 10 how much anxiety each situation produces. So 0 is no anxiety, 10 is extreme anxiety. Now these are called SUDS levels, alright? SUD, subjective units of distress. So just get used to saying my SUDS are at 5, my SUDS are at 9, whatever. It's very useful. And then once you've done that, just put your list in order from the least anxiety provoking to the most. And that'll be your fear hierarchy done, okay? Page 25, there's an example of a fear hierarchy. On the left hand side, situation or place. On the right hand side, the level of anxiety it produces, your SUDS rating. So in this particular example, the least anxiety provoking situation, and it's a good idea to start with something that produces some anxiety. There's no point writing down situations that don't cause much anxiety at all, because you can already do those successfully, so you don't need to do those. You're trying to start with something that produces a certain amount of anxiety, but just not so much. Okay, so anxiety rating of 3 or 4, that's what you want to start with. So in this example, it's standing in a queue. That's the least anxiety provoking on this person's list. And then it'll be a shopping centre. So shopping centre is a bigger place, might feel a bit more trapped, a lot more people around. Cinema then, meeting my neighbours. Now perhaps this person has had a panic attack when they met the neighbours, and then that causes them more anxiety. Sitting in the canteen at work and moving up to driving on the motorway. You may relate to these yourself. Going up an escalator, walking over bridges, giving a presentation at work. It's very anxiety provoking indeed. And lastly, going on holiday, because that's when a person is forced to be away from their safe zone for an extended amount of time where they feel they're stuck. Okay, so can you see how that works? So print out the worksheets in the blank worksheets ebook.